Hello there, everyone. My name's Joe. I'm General Manager at FinTech North. Really looking forward to getting stuck into the data sovereignty paradox webinar today, hosted in partnership with Pulsant. I'm just going to take a few minutes at the start of the webinar to just explain a little bit about the work that we do at FinTech North, and kind of set the scene in advance of going into the discussion today. So yeah, really looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing a few people from the community join in the discussion as well. We'll have a few questions that we'll ask our audience. We'll be able to post some polls. You'll be able to ask questions in the chat of our speakers. And my colleague Ryan will shortly be posting some messages on behalf of FinTech North as well, just explaining some of what we've got coming up in terms of early next year and the rest of this year. So yeah, really looking forward to getting into the discussion today. And yeah, great to see you all. Thanks for joining the webinar today, or indeed watching the webinar back once we've published our recording. So without further ado, I will just share my screen with you all now and just run through a few slides. Hopefully you can see my slides now. I'll let somebody jump in if they can't. I'm sure it's all working okay. So yeah, delighted to be collaborating with Pulsant. Pulsant are the UK's leading edge infrastructure specialists. They've been an amazing partner to FinTech North across this year. One of the key sponsors and partners of our Manchester conference last month, and yeah, delighted to be returning to this incredibly important topic of data sovereignty with their support. And we'll be focusing today on compliance, control, and performance specifically as well. So yeah, huge thanks to Mike and the whole team at Pulsant for their support across the year. Can't wait to hear from Mike later on, and some of our awesome panelists as well. Really looking forward to hearing some of their insights and experiences on this topic, and thanks to them for sharing that with the community today. Thanks also to the FinTech North team, Ryan and Rachel, hard at work in the background as ever to bring you all together and to make these events a success. Couldn't do any of this without you guys, so thank you very much, team. And final thanks, of course, to the FinTech North community, for joining this live or indeed watching it back on record. So yeah, looking forward to getting stuck into things today. As mentioned, I'm Joe. I'm General Manager of FinTech North. There's an email address on screen there if you'd like to reach out to FinTech North for any questions or queries, or indeed any inquiries around working together. Potentially, we're always on the lookout for new speakers, new sponsors, new partners. So please do reach out if you've got any questions around that, or indeed if you just want to understand more about the work that we do at FinTech North and the ecosystem that we support. So FinTech North, as I said, I wanted to explain a little bit about the work that we do for those people who've not joined a FinTech North event before. For those who've heard me say this many times, apologies in advance. I think it's really important to just explain a little bit about our work before we get stuck into things. As an organization, we exist to bring the Northern FinTech community together, be that sort of physically or albeit virtually. All of our activity reflects these objectives that you can see on screen right now. We're here to develop the community, develop the sector wherever we can, supporting startups and scale-ups or new market entrants with profile and connections, and indeed working with larger organizations to provide that kind of value as well. We're here to promote the North as a centre of excellence in fintech. We're here to make sure that all of that excellent innovation that's happening isn't happening in silos across the North and is actually part of a wider UK ecosystem success story, and indeed make sure that those innovators on the ground know what's happening at a national and indeed international level. So think of us as a bit of a conduit between the regional and the national there, I would say. All of that's quite big picture. I think this infographic does a really good job of explaining what we're all about. We achieve those objectives mainly through the medium of events, bringing people together face to face or virtually to share their insights, to share best practice, to champion diversity, to shine a light on regional innovation. So yeah, it's very event-led. We are very community focused in the work that we do. There's over 9,000 people in the FinTech North community, as you can see some of those stats down the right-hand side there. And I think probably most significantly, I always like to highlight the fact that we are self-funded. We require the support of like-minded partners and sponsors such as Pulsant to come on board and help us, in terms of doing the work that we do. So yeah, huge thank you to all of those organisations, and I'll put our partners up on screen now. So huge thank you to these organisations for having our back across the year and helping shape content at some of our events. So that's FinTech North. just wanted to explain a little bit about the sector that we support quickly as well. So fintech in the north of England is, thriving. We've probably got around about 400 fintech firms in the north of England. That's out of about 2,000, 2,500 roughly, in the UK as a whole. The sector in the north is generating £5 billion GVA every year for the UK economy. Payments is a really strong subsector for Northern FinTech and indeed the UK as a whole. It probably accounts for about half of the FinTech that we see right across the north. But other strong subsectors would include banking, lending, regtech, wealth tech, and insurtech, all of which index really highly right across the north. And we see different specialisms in different city regions as well. So Greater Manchester, really strong on payments and e-commerce. Liverpool, strong on wealth tech and insurtech. The Northeast, another really strong payments ecosystem. And Leeds is really strong on lending and regtech as well. So just wanted to give you an idea of some of those specialisms that we see right across the north. As you all know, I could go into a lot more detail and wax lyrical about some of the historical reasons behind some of that and go into more detail about all of those ecosystems, but I'll keep things moving for now because I can't wait to get stuck into this topic. Final few slides from me then, just to kind of highlight that our strategy over the last 2 years has focused not just on events, which obviously are a really important way of achieving those objectives, but we've also been working extensively on initiatives in international trade. So we've been working to pull together fintech trade missions, both here in the UK and indeed overseas in other markets as well. And we'll look to continue that work next year as well. We have launched a survey, which we'll be sharing with the community, and would really urge you to fill that out. And perhaps Ryan could put that in the chat whilst I'm talking as well, to get an idea of what other markets around the world that you're interested in at the moment. And next year we'll be looking to kind of really focus on some of those markets with some of our activity there. And finally, skills. Skills for us is a really important pillar of our strategy and has been for the last 2 years. Constantly hearing from organisations that are struggling to find people with the right skills to fuel the growth of their business, and vice versa. We hear often from people in the early stages of a fintech career or trying to get into the sector, unaware of what skills they need, how to get into the sector. So we've kind of taken that on as a bit of a crusade. We want to, be a bit of a conduit, I suppose, a bridge between industry and academia. And we've been working quite extensively with a few academic institutions around this, Leeds Beckett University, Illuminate Education Group especially, to try and upskill some of their students, working on activity like boot camps, upskilling modules, things like that to kind of ready the students for the world of work. So if this as a kind of theme, as a mission resonates with you and your organisation, would really love to hear from you. Final thing to highlight would be some of our events coming up next year. We've obviously got a packed schedule already. Q1's looking quite well planned. Some of the big things to highlight here would be our Liverpool conference taking place right towards the end of Q1 on the 19th of March. Our Leeds conference will be happening on the 14th of May, and our Newcastle conference will be happening in the summer in July. So there's some of the big events that you can look forward to. But yeah, we'll be getting to Liverpool, Leeds, Cheshire with other events as well. As always, trying to get to the entire north with our events. Far too much on here for me to talk in too much detail, but hopefully this gives you an idea of what we're planning. And please keep an eye on our website because we'll be going live with some of these events soon. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. Yeah, really looking forward to getting stuck into the discussion today. If I could ask Mike to join me on the virtual stage, I'll just let Mike give a quick welcome on behalf of Pulsant, say a few words. And yeah, thanks again, Mike, for your support with this. Really looking forward to the discussion.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today. I'm really pleased to be here. So hopefully, what will be an engaging discussion on sort of data sovereignty, and within that we'll maybe unpack that as we get into it. But a little bit first on just on me and who Pulsant are, if that's okay. So I'm Pulsant's Chief Technology Officer. Ultimately responsible for our product portfolio, our technology platform blueprint. I've got probably 25 years plus experience, maybe stopped counting now, in the industry, primarily working with service providers in sort of operational technology roles. Probably at times I've maybe described myself as a technology Luddite, despite the title. What kind of excites me is talking about technology and actually how it solves real business challenges. So I'm often sort of thinking just because you can doesn't mean you should. So yes, hopefully we'll kind of get into some of that today as well. In terms of Pulsant, who are we? Sort of good introduction there from Joe. And as you said, we're an edge infrastructure platform provider. We've got a unique multi-regional presence in the UK. And if I unpack that a bit, what does that really mean? We have 14 data centers across the UK. From in the south, Midlands, the north, up into Scotland as well, and that puts us in a kind of a unique position. We run infrastructure for our clients in our data centers, but we also run our own infrastructure services, so compute platforms that can provide either cloud directly from Pulsant or cloud via some of our providers that sit in our ecosystem. That infrastructure and those data centers, they're all connected by a high bandwidth, low latency network. And part of our proposition is that because we are a UK-owned business, it is UK data centers. Our network we understand exactly where our network sits around the country. We're not kind of tiering services from different suppliers, so that supply chain becomes very transparent working with Pulsant. Why is all that important, I guess, in the context of today? And I think, what are some of the challenges that we see UK businesses sort of facing? There is a regulation and compliance challenge that comes through. I think that'll probably come out today. It'll be a strong focus of the discussion. And as I said, as a UK business, we can kind of provide that alternative viewpoint from not necessarily just assuming the only path forward is to host your platforms sits within a hyperscaler or other provider. I think we're probably, won't be alone in saying this, but every business is looking to do more for less. There's always a cost squeeze on whether it's your OpEx expense within your business, your cost of goods. So I think we start to see businesses need some cost assurance and predictable performance before that cost as well, and that's certainly an angle that we focus on. And then maybe the last point that I'd raise here is around sort of performance and optimization. I think there is choices out there, and there's always within which makes technology a great industry, is that there's the hype that goes on as new technology goes, and we gravitate towards some of those centralized technologies. Typically, as the use cases then develop, technology starts to distribute and become very specific for its use cases, and we see this all the time. And actually, with that distributed platform that we have around the UK, we can start to answer some of those performance and optimization demands. So, what that really brings to you is that cost assurance piece comes together. You've got that meeting your regulation, your compliance, but also you're hitting those performance and optimizing your platforms as well. So hopefully that kind of gives you a little bit of an insight to who we are. And as I say, I'm very much looking forward to getting into a discussion around data sovereignty with my fellow panelists.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike, setting the scene for us wonderfully there. So I'll keep things moving then. If I could ask our wonderful chair, Claire Black from CFIT, to join us on the virtual stage. Claire, I'll hand over to you to introduce yourself and our panel. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Joe, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us at today's FinTech North webinar, which is delivered in partnership with Pulsant. We sort of touched on this topic a little bit at a panel we had at the great event in Manchester. That was it last week. Feels a long time ago already. But I'm Chief Operating Officer at CFIT, so that's the Centre for Finance, Innovation and Technology. We don't have the snappiest of names. We're a public-private, not-for-profit organisation, bring together government, industry and regulators, lock them all up and try and solve some systemic challenges to financial innovation. And we've worked on areas such as open finance and opening up access to credit for SMEs in the UK. We're now looking at smart data, how that can help resolve some of the issues out there, digital IDs for either for corporates or individuals, and then the role of tokenization in all of that as well. So before we kind of dig into the panel itself, I'd like to ask Clara, Kaushik, Mike, you've already introduced yourself, so maybe Clara, Kaushik, you could just introduce yourselves quickly, and then I'll just go back into a little bit of a scene setter before we start our discussion. Do you want to kick off, Clara?
Hello, everyone. My name is Clara Doroti. I'm the CEO and the founder of Cognitive Finance Group. It's a company I founded about 10 years ago when I placed a personal bet that artificial intelligence will change financial services from the ground up, the way we operate, the way we create business, the way we stay profitable, and the way we engage with each other and the products that we create. No one believed me back then, but I wrote the book. I wrote the second book about AI in financial services, and I keep my predictions seem to come true. So I was lucky on that. What we do with cognitive finance is a high level, board level, primarily C-suite strategic AI advisory. When we found the company, we used to be a data science hands-on company. We were known as McKinsey of AI in 2016 when no one understood what AI was. Probably that's why we were nicknamed that. But what we do 10 years on, we realized that the value going forward is very much not only in understanding how to deploy AI, but also understand the strategy, the tactical moves, understanding what the landscape, how the landscape shapes up 5 years ahead in order to be able to take the right decisions today. So that's what we engaged. We've engaged with specialist advised financial services, FinTech, financial services regulators as well, not just in the UK, but outside of the UK. So I bring a global senior board level understanding of the competencies around governance of AI, strategic understanding of where we do cost allocations of resources in terms of establishing a digital presence and a sustainability and reliability, as well as resilience of business models in the digital world. In a nutshell, that's me.
That's great. Thank you, Clara. We look forward to tapping on all of that, especially around the global view as well when we go into our discussion. Kaushik, would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you again for joining. My name is Kaushik, and I have almost 2 decades experience in product management with focus on payments, banking, and fintech industry. For last decade or so, I have been focused on scaling and building AI and ML-driven fraud prevention solutions, which has significant usage in terms of data and how the data is used not only locally in specific geographies, but across the globe, because fraudsters are everywhere, and that is where the data comes into picture on fraud prevention. So looking forward to this webinar. It's definitely an exciting topic for me.
It is fascinating, and great to have you on screen again, Mike. So I think as financial services become increasingly data-driven, whether that's through, I don't know, AI-enabled decisioning or using it in payments platforms, fraud prevention, to right up to sort of large-scale cloud adoption, the question of where that data is stored, how it moves, who actually has, the control over it, meaningful control over it, has probably never been more important. And then, when I said that we touched on this in the panel last week, it was around that. Are we as a country, UK PLC and the corporates within it, the individuals, are we really assessing this at that very strategic level? Because it feels that it is becoming, a strategic, key, important thing that we need to face. So there's this sort of paradox, for, not only financial institutions, but any corporate entity who's using that data. storing that data and moving it. It's ensuring that governance, jurisdictional control, regulatory compliance, but at the same time as that, especially in financial services, we know it is a very, very global industry. Everything is interconnected, and so we don't want to compromise performance, agility, and innovation. At a time when digital finance is well, it's there, it's living with us, and it's becoming more and more digital as we go, and use blockchain and digital currencies and central bank currencies and so on and so forth. So, I know Mike was keen for us to sort of really unpack and discuss, are we really assessing the risk of that from a data sovereignty, residency and resilience perspective? So that's going to be the sort of main thrust of our panel today. I think just to sort of kick us off, if each of you could, answer this briefly, what does that paradox part of that mean in your part of the industry? Mike, maybe you'd like to kick us off with that one.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, so I think there's often a lot of paradox when it comes to technology. I think I've probably relate some of the for many years we talk about the cost performance reliability triangle, and you can have any two, you can't have all three. And I guess what I'm sort of testing here is if I kind of tweak that slightly and said, it's cost, performance, and control, maybe, in terms of data control. Can we have all three? And I think that's really the bit that I'm kind of trying to unpack here, and I'd like to think there's a way forward with that.
Clara, any thoughts from you on that first bit?
I think the key important thing when you look at data, it's part of a bigger picture, the landscape that forms AI transformation, which includes AI infrastructure, but also includes data strategy, parts of two key pillars to actually build a meaningful narrative around AI transformation or AI adoption in the enterprise. So I think what I would like to add in the context of our conversation, it's important to understand data residence and data resilience control, what Mike just mentioned, in the bigger scheme of data strategy, data strategy, but also from an oversight, AI governance oversight consideration, which typically is done at the board level, more like management level, where the responsibility of oversight of technology is, quite frankly, stays with them. That's where the whole conversation should start and should end. So that's one component. Is data. Is the oversight. The other component, which is very important, is in terms of resource allocation. It's important to understand what an organization needs to do, given the backdrop of policy changes, regulations coming through, responsibilities, compliance, exactly as Mike's mentioned. And I guess finally, to me, the third very important point regarding the context of our conversation today is to do with security, anything to do with safety and security of technology. So we have done work and advised clients that have decided, for instance, that they keep different data in different places, and sometimes the same data in 3 different places as a backup, so that in the case of a cyber attack, they don't remain blocked out and they can't access their own data. So in that regard, they see a lot of benefit of actually keeping their data in 2, 3 sometimes places, and indeed proprietary data they feel very inclined to have it residence where they have their headquarters, or where the main bulk of their business is being done.
Yeah.
So you see, it's so important to understand that when you look at data sovereignty, it's as far as I'm concerned, and from where I stand, my vista point, it's a three-layer, three-prong sort of narrative that needs to be looked at. And I think it's important to understand the value that having data residency in the UK for UK companies adds to the UK resident businesses. And quite frankly, these are conversations I very rarely hear people marvel at what can be done with AI, and the extraordinary things, the magnificent engine that AI is. And it's just fabulous that we can do so many wonderful things in the enterprise. You can see a lot of workflows changed from the ground up in no time. And we marvel at that, and we're just really excited about it. But no one, or very few people, actually, in the midst of that amazement, thinks about, oh, hang on a minute, how safe is my data? And are we complying with regulations? And how much are we subjected to the hyperscalers' pricing whims?
Because we're very much in awe of what it can do, and that seems to override everything else. I'd like to bring Kaushik in, if I can, just on this before we get too deep into everything. But do you have any other points to add around that sort of paradox of the sort of the wow factor which overrides and therefore stops us thinking about regulation, about what we're giving away, who we're giving away to?
Certainly. So I would like to start with the point of ethical innovation. So on one side, companies as well as individuals want to innovate, and they want to innovate very fast to stay on the market and be a cutting edge solution provider. But on the other side, since technologies like AI and ML, they are using data, the ethical innovation comes into picture. Like on one side, we want to build new solutions. On the other side, there are compliances. Even the regulators like Financial Conduct Authority, the PSRs, like payment service regulators, they are also working very hard to come up with the new regulations, how the existing regulations can stay current. Like, for example, PSD2 was Payment Service Directive was introduced in last decade, but now we are working on PSD3, which is the next version. So how do we maintain the right speed between the innovation, while the most important thing that I think is the consumer's data. So on one side, the consumer data needs to be looked at, the compliance, and then still as a company or organization stay on top of everything. So that is where the paradox comes into picture.
Yeah, Mike, and maybe I can sort of bring you in there, because I know, in the report, it's sort of highlighting this growing tension between the regulatory expectations, the speed of the regulation or not, and those, either cloud adoption strategies or new payment methods, whatever it may be. So what do you think is driving that tension the most?
Yeah, I mean, I think raise a really good point, and sort of regulation and governance can be quite slow. There's probably, for me, maybe there's a danger there that we is slackening or weakening regulation the right thing? Absolutely not. But we back to that, we get in awe of technology and want to embrace it, we want to go quicker and want to drive quicker. So I think that there's a discussion also to be had about how we can kind of get regulation developing as at the same sort of pace. And I think this might came up in our session last week as well, but almost like regulation and governance as code. I think that would kind of, we talk about running digital platforms and consuming more digital software as a service and so on and so forth. But actually, if our regulation takes the same direction, maybe these things start to level up, and we don't have to think about bypassing it, skipping it, weakening it. We can kind of keep things bolstered together. So.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Clara, maybe I can sort of bring you in with, your background from that sort of governance versus risk perspective. How should organizations think about this from, sort of business continuity planning perspective? When their critical data, those infrastructures, sit across multiple jurisdictions, even if the main bulk may be in the country where they're headquartered or whatever, they're probably sharing data across the globe. So what are your thoughts on that around the business continuity?
Well, the data sharing regulations are very, very complex, and I don't even dare to get anywhere near uh, in this particular webinar, because it's just like it's the time is very limited, and
Yes, yes.
the topic is enormous. But
Mm,
what I would like to share with you, and I found a best practice across quite a number of organizations, is this understanding that we for clients in a certain jurisdiction, they prefer to have multiple copies of their data in terms of securing continuity.
mm,
Should they be hacked, or should they be subjected to a ransom, request, which they do or they don't want to accept. They always wanted, for the purpose of business continuity, um, to have a backup of that data, to enable them at least the minimum of a viable level of continuity of their business. So from that perspective alone, I've been talking about the need of having data residence where you run your business in the jurisdiction you run your business. It's been at
mm.
least 5 years. We've been like systematically on this topic, because
Yeah,
it makes sense from a oversight perspective. It makes sense from a compliance perspective. It
yeah,
makes sense from a financial perspective. In case you're attacked, you always have a backup data, so you continue your business. I mean, it makes sense across the board
mm,
to have that. Clearly, there are, for certain tasks across multiple jurisdictions, some very large organizations find that it's a value to them to use some of the hyperscalers, but that doesn't mean that in order to protect their continuity in a jurisdiction, they don't need to look at data residence for the resilience purposes.
yeah.
And quite frankly, and also for satisfying regulatory requirements in terms of data sharing,
Mm,
cross-border data sharing.
yeah. Kaushik, maybe I can bring you in here around, this data sovereignty. Do you think it's more around national control, so a kind of like GDPR style, that's probably even multinational control, or is it more individual end user control? In financial services, how should we balance those two? Or should we be using, both ends to protect it ultimately?
I think I would say using both hands is the right way, because on one side there are end users, so in especially like in the financial industry, they have bank accounts, and obviously, like for example, a person is living in the UK but they may go on vacation somewhere else, like for example Spain, and that is where the cross-border payments and cross-border transactions really come into picture.
Mm,
So the sovereignty really needs to be on the user side, because it's ultimately users data that we are talking about, the end user or the consumer. But at the same time, as financial institutions are also processing all the data, like who is the data controller, who is the processor, and how do we regulate everything, including the audits and compliance. Like it could be quarterly audits, it could be annual audits. So how do we still stay compliant? That is where looking at both sides really come into picture.
yeah, okay. I can see we've got a poll come up around data visibility, so it'll be interesting to see how the audience answers around whether, do you know where your data sits and how it moves. Rachel, I'm assuming you will come back and give us the results of that, or does it just appear?
Yeah, I'll put them on screen once we've got some results in.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mike, sort of linking back again to your report, what do you think is, this is around sort of UK infrastructure, cloud maturity, and just sort of the operational realities for people running their businesses. What do you think's the biggest practical blocker that's preventing firms from achieving sovereignty, but without compromising on performance, speed?
Yeah, good question. I think, unlike Ethan, there's probably not any one answer to it. What I see from my side, that there's a bit, maybe it's just starts with sort of education awareness. It goes back to that technology point. We all kind of dive at the things because they're made readily available. We don't stop to question or think about it, and that probably leads, and it will be interesting to see what the survey says. We don't then start to question where our data sits. So if you are then at the point where you think, oh, I need to look at this, I now realize that I don't know, I'm going to correct that. How do I then change? You then start to come into maybe some sort of technical blockers, and I think that can be anything from common challenge that I kind of hear from some of our clients about cloud locking, where they have kind of gone into some of that sort of hyperscale space.
Yeah.
Naturally, a number of clients, and we're no different as an organization, will take SaaS-based services. So we'll, some of our some great platform offerings out there, and we'll kind of put some of our data over there and think, oh, actually, I'm now tied into that. So how could I get a hold of that data to go and transfer it over here? So I think there's some technology blockers for sure, but perhaps maybe it's just that those risks and considerations weren't made before they walked into it. So I sort of call it sort of becoming, are you consciously cloud, or have you become unconsciously cloud? So I think having that discussion up front and understanding is probably the key to that.
Yeah. Kaushik, do you have any thoughts on that? I can see you nodding.
Yeah, definitely. So what I would like to add is the different technologies that are still in existence, like there are still companies processing the data on mainframe. Then we are talking about cloud. There are futuristic technologies like metaverse and blockchain, things like that. So the data is stored in so many technologies, which are like, some are age-old technologies and some are latest cutting-edge technologies. So how do we still, like when the user says, oh, I want my data to be forgotten, how do we process through all the data points, the places, and then erase the data? So that is where even though there is willingness to implement everything, the speed to market or speed to deliver also becomes a challenge.
Yeah, a lot of the old legacy models are still resolutely embedded and sort of patched up, and we have to take that into account as well. Are you sort of hearing that, Clara, as well, from different parts of the world that you're going to and speaking at conferences and to boards and corporates?
Well, it is the same problem with different nuances, but essentially, I would concur to the same conclusion. The challenges are vast. It's just a very, very complex environment. But we can get into complexity very easily. But I'd like to just keep the message really simple. The value of data residence cannot be underestimated.
Yeah.
And it's so important to really think, actually, what is our data strategy? What's our cloud strategy? How much money we spend? Are we clear as to we're going to have continuity and resilience and affordability, quite frankly, going forward? And that has to be, those conversations need to be part of risk assessment, impact assessments, regular assessments that companies need to perform. And quite frankly, there are certain things that, one, you must think about data residency. Very few people think about that, and you have to understand the cost implications to maintain data in a certain place. And as I was about to start, getting into the rabbit hole conversation of we can think of many things, but we don't think about where our data is. And we need to have that conversation on a regular basis.
Yes.
And it's like a home, it's like your home if you're renting, because at the end of the day, that's what it is. If you're renting from a hyperscaler, you have to see whether you're going to be in the same place for the next 10 years or 15 years or what happens,
Yeah.
Or you actually, you're better off staying closer to home where it's safer, where you can go and knock at people's door, at your supplier and say, hey, Mike, can you help me with this? So I think we shouldn't underestimate the value of actually being able to be in the same jurisdiction and solve problems directly.
Yeah. And it's interesting because when I came into FinTech, the innovation in financial services, I worked at Innovate Finance for a little while, a few years ago. So probably 10 or so years ago, when all of this was just really starting to take off and happen. And obviously, the UK sort of claimed that top spot because it really got that balance right between the government working together with the regulators, working together with the industry. And, we created those regulatory sandboxes, which have now been, copied throughout the world. There are 70 odd of them around the world nowadays. Similar sort of thing with open banking, although you could say we're kind of grinding a little bit to a halt with that. Not a halt, but it takes a long time for a change like that to be adopted not only by the industry but also by the users. So, I mean, do we think the UK itself is doing a good job in that area? Do we think that we have, we're known through the world for our good legal system, our regulators who seem to get that right balance between allowing a bit of risk and innovation, but also trying to keep up with that and getting the right level of governance. So just interested in what you all think. Mike, maybe your thoughts first as to whether we are getting it right here, or are there other jurisdictions where you think they're going ahead of us on that?
I think you make a good point. We've been seen to be very strong in that area, and I am seeing things where we are trying to kind of get, it's very difficult to get ahead of the curve with that, isn't it? But we're starting to have the right discussions about how regulation should change and how we should kind of do that. Like anything, I guess there's a little bit of a two-side element to it. We even from a government perspective, we still actually, I think the same challenge exists there. We spend a lot of money with US tech, and we kind of put a lot of our systems into some of the hyperscale things. So there's a little bit there where it's is that a little bit sort of two-sided. And I don't know probably better views from maybe others on this, but I'm seeing things like where we are making things easier for technology to develop. Which, so on one hand, that should be a good thing, right? But what do we lose by doing that? And
yeah.
I think it was Korshak reference about the right to be forgotten, and I think if we're making it easier to share data and we don't have that control discussion, we lose sight of those things that we've said are a good thing to have, and we can't then pull data back and we can't control it. So yeah, there's a number of things that we're doing right, but it does take time. It is slow, and we need to maybe think about how we can speed those conversations up.
Yeah, Korshak, do you have any views on that?
Yeah, certainly. So UK is definitely trying to stay on top of it, I would say, because the regulatory authorities like Bank of England, PSR, FCA, they're definitely working each and every day to review the existing legislations as well as come up with the new regulations. And then not only that, they're also working with the industries or the different companies to build those solutions and then understand the pain points that currently the market is facing, and then incorporating everything in the futuristic things. So definitely UK is trying to stay on top of it.
Okay. Clara, you travel
Okay,
around,
so
see many other jurisdictions. I'm interested in your thoughts.
So I'm not a lawyer, but I'm just going to quote a friend of mine who is very knowledgeable in the constitutional law in the UK,
Mm.
common law, corporate law, and so on and so forth. And he said something very interesting, which I'd like to share with everybody for, a reflection point. We keep saying that the UK has a fabulous legal framework. And that's true. That's given, according to my legal knowledgeable friend. He said that that's thanks to common law, constitution, and so on and so forth. A legal framework that has been very successful and in comparison with other jurisdictions, across hundreds of years. Okay. What is happening for the past few years, few decades, I'm told, a layer of regulation has been added, and in doing so, those pieces of regulations, they are changing the nature of that good legal framework everybody talks about.
Yeah.
So when we talk about in the UK, we have this fantastic legal framework, we do. But if we keep, adding on regulations and legislation that actually eats into that good thing, we're going to be left with not a lot of that good thing. And in doing so, we're not going to be very competitive in relation to other jurisdictions. So this is some really deep food for thought for people in the policy making space, or people who are looking to progress with different sort of initiatives. Just because it's innovation, we're going to do the right thing because everybody else does it in the world, let's do it. Because everybody else does it in the world, we're going to do it, which means that it's going to eat into that really successful legal framework that is carried on the UK across so many hundreds of years, and has been the envy of so many other countries. So big food for thought for people creating policies and thinking about the future and the future legislative framework of this country. So that's all I can add and quote my friend.
That's great. Thank you. We've got a question come up from one of the listeners about what resources, periodicals or elsewhere, can we look at to stay informed on data safety, software developments in this area. So I don't know if each of you have any recommendations that you could give on that.
I think it's a great question, because I'd equally like to know as well, because I think that's part of why the discussions we're sort of finding out is so broad. I have lots of feeds about sort of technology development and exciting things around software development and everything else, and I have other feeds about sort of kind of data, and the conversation isn't coming together. So I think I'd love to know if someone's got a good podcast or a feed where they do try and bring the two things together. But yeah, it's a good question.
Clara?
Well, it's something that that we strive to, and been doing so to educate the industry and the practitioners for the past decade. I try to do that on a sort of timely basis through my newsletter, but also there are other avenues that we are trying to extend education in this field. But I'm sure maybe FinTech North Joe can give us a little bit of a input about the work that they are doing. In addition to all of that, perhaps this might be the right time to mention that Pulsant has this great report. I see the link; it's in the chat, and most definitely I would recommend people to read that. So the short of it is that we spend a lot of time on governance. Under the governance of AI, we focus on data safety, data strategy, various ways to look at what enterprises and decision makers should do and think about doing.
Yeah. Kaushik, is there anything that you use yourself or could recommend?
Yeah, definitely. So I first look into the Bank of England's publication if they have any publications. Then also I keep looking into like Financial Conduct Authority. They have certain publications and blogs that they publish on their website itself, and similarly PSR, the Payment Service Regulator. Uh, since I work in cross-border payments, I also look into the other uh, regulations, like for example, the DORA Act that EU has introduced,
Yeah.
as well as they introduced the AI Act earlier this year. So how all these cross-industry regulations, especially since we are talking about data, and the data always keeps crossing the borders, not just one territory. So I keep looking into all these different possibilities. Like European Union have their own website where they publish all the regulations. Even the UK Parliament, for that matter, if any new legislation is being introduced, the text about is always published there. So there are different avenues to look into.
Yeah, and I think because there's a lot of stuff out there, but some of the big UK and international legal firms and consultancy firms, they often produce these sorts of documents where they kind of amalgamate and add their own thoughts on as well. So it's worth maybe looking on their websites too on on the sort of data governance sections. I just want to take us off slightly to look more, what's happening now, but into the future, innovation, technology. So technologies such as blockchain, what role can they play? Are they playing in supporting that sort of genuine user level data sovereignty? And is there anything we need to change so that can become viable at scale? I suppose, is there a volunteer who would like to take that one first?
I might give it a view. I think Kaushik might have some more interesting kind of sort of stories on this piece. But I think the short answer is yes. I mean, it will. Is it there at scale yet? And have we kind of thought about how it fits in, how it can be applied? Probably not, which is why we have the challenge today.
Yeah.
And I think there's also a piece which maybe is a technology rabbit hole I've risk of getting into, so I won't. But actually, in terms of how it that distributed capability, where does it sit? Is there sufficient bandwidth and all those things around to kind of develop it at scale? I think that's an interesting conversation. But yeah, I think it does give us that user level control. It has the potential to give us that user level control, and I think that's quite an exciting one to watch.
Yes, thank you. Kaushik, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I would start with customer education. So blockchain is a technology and it has several use cases. The most famous ones are like obviously the digital coins. But since we are talking about the data here, that it would be a good learning curve for the end user to understand how the data is stored in the blockchain. Like it is a ledger based solution, but there is a private key, public key, and hashing and algorithms are used to make sure the data is not accessible by anyone who is not supposed to access the data, and that is how the end user can control the data. So the customer education is important, I think, because that will make sure the end users start to understand the technology solutions that are available, which will also help the technology providers to penetrate their products into the market.
Yeah, thank you. We're nearly actually at time. It seems to have flown by. But before we finish off, Clara, I'd just like to ask you and others as well. Please join in. What do you think good looks like? Like, how will we know a financial institution, for example, but it could be any institution, has genuinely achieved data sovereignty? What are the signs that they're talking about it probably and know where their data sits, but
I think I'm just gonna on this one. I'm just gonna go with what it means for an organization, but also what it means to us as individual users, consumers of financial services. Joe Blog, regular Joe, and Jane. So for management teams, for instance, a successful strategy would mean that they keep costs in check. They feel that they have a backup option, or they are properly protected in a case of an online incident, and they would be able to continue their sort of business as usual without interruption. And the costs would be manageable and predictable.
Yeah.
And clearly is the benefit of being able to satisfy regulations and, be in the same jurisdiction. And for UK, within 2 hours or 3 hours, you're anywhere in the country. So that's a huge advantage.
Yeah.
If you need to have a supplier based in your jurisdiction. As far as Joe Blog is, I'm like me, the consumer, the user of financial services. I think there's a benefit to that. For companies that would look after my data, companies that would be able to ensure that my data is not anybody's and everybody's fodder, should they want to feast on it, is that level of what companies are waking up to appreciate is the respect for people's data.
Yeah.
And I speak for this way, and I've been of an open proponent of an open critic of those who don't respect personal data protection, not in a sort of dogmatic way, but in a common sense, sensible way, where we build a name as an organization protecting people's consumers' data. And I think that comes with data sovereignty, that comes with ability to ensure that you identify where the data is stored, and if you protect it, if you anonymize it. Sorry, it's just like I'm there. And I'm trying to just put too much in. And finally, just to ensure that the data is deleted if the customer wants to do so, or the regulator wants to do exercise some sort of controls over that, if the case is indeed one that justifies it.
Yeah.
So is that kind of my submission is that we're going to move in a space where personal data, which we have taken for granted for so long, in the name of innovation, in the name of progress, in the name of let's keep up with the shiny new things, we've taken our consumers' data for granted. And we have used it and abused it. And I think people are waking up to a point where they're going, well, hang on a minute, maybe I just don't want you to do that with my data. Because at the end of the day, if I'm not your customer, it means you don't have a business.
Yeah.
So that's it. So it's a wake-up call, which we have been tracking since 2021 through different data points. So that would be a trend to really consider as a.
Yeah, I think it's a really key trend, and whether we can we do have to offer that access or not access. Are we going to start charging for the use of our data? We could go on for another hour on that, I suppose.
Oh yeah.
We do have to draw it to a close. So Mike, Kaushik, I just wanted to finish off with both of you, very short answer. If we were to have this conversation again in 2 years' time, what will have changed the most, do you think? Regulation, the technology, or the industry mindset, or indeed the consumer's mindset?
It's an easy answer, isn't it? If I just, I'd like to see all of that move forward. I think that it's a great point that Clara's kind of summed up there. That there is a piece we have to play to kind of drive that organisations to think about what they're doing with our data. I'd love it if in some of the research, if you read what we did there, that when I asked the question, do organisations know where they're storing their data? Do they know how they're transiting it? Do they know if it's resilient? If over half are saying they don't at the moment, that's got to be a worry for all of us. So we need to drive that and move it forward. So yeah, it'd be great to see that that be an answer where every organisation has considered that, and we're in control of our data.
Great. Kaushik?
It would be
Last
interesting.
minute.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see how the customer's mindset has changed after
Yeah,
a few years, especially because there are so many new things that keep coming up every month, or like literally things are coming. So it would be interesting to see how customers feel about it, and are they building, are they feeling trustworthy of where their data is, their money is, and all the things.
yeah. Great. Well, Mike, Clara, Kaushik, thank you very much. It's been a fascinating conversation. I hope that we can come back in 2 years and continue it. It will be interesting to see where we're at. And Joe and team at FinTech North, thank you very much for hosting it.
Thanks, Claire. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Claire. Yeah, as always, expertly chaired by your good self. Thank you for your time as well. Yeah,
Thank you.
huge thanks to everyone for joining the session. Thank you very much to everyone who's joined us live, and indeed everyone who's tuned in to watch the recording back. Thanks for your questions as well. Really appreciate that engagement live on these things, and obviously anybody watching the webinar back. Would really encourage you to get in contact with all of our speakers and connect with them on LinkedIn, and any other questions you can kind of follow up the discussion from there. That brings us to time. Fantastic topic for discussion, really important and pertinent to the sector at the moment. The final thing I'd like to say is just to kind of highlight some of those upcoming events one more time. We're up in the Northeast with a social to close out the year next week, which will be awesome. And then, yeah, just encourage you all to keep an eye out on our website, and we'll continue doing that work that Clara mentioned, continue highlighting these important topics to the future of our sector. And just leave the final thing to say thank you to Pulsant for supporting this session, and hope to see you all again either at a FinTech North event in person or dialing into another webinar. So thank you very much. We'll bring that to a close.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.